Greetings, it is I, Countess Naraban Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the second edition of AD&D. When we last left off, we began talking about NPCs, and I got down to 3 special types of hirelings. I introduced you to the assassin. Let's finish talking about the assassin. So, a PC should never hire an assassin to use on another PC. This oftentimes can cause conflicts between the players, which is unnecessary to the game and can cause anger and conflict outside of the game, not just within the game. So it is something that is just a plain no for any of your characters to do. You do not want them to do that. Now, on the other hand, it is possible that through their actions, a NPC could, of course, hire assassins to attack the PCs. Use this sparingly, and only when the plot actually calls for something like this. If it doesn't seem to fit along with the plot, don't do it, and you should always give your PCs a chance to overcome the assassin and be successful, to survive and to fight on. The fact is that when the PCs would hire on an assassin in order to go after a NPC, should that assassin fail, it could cause this problem of the assassin being sent back at the PCs. They would have, in fact, provoked this target, and this target could either attack them outright, or it could send assassins of their own against our PCs. So you can see there is a disadvantage, especially if failure is an option. And the sheer fact is, if your PCs are basically doing this for greed or out of spite and hiring an assassin, oftentimes it's suggested that you make that fail. You should also make it fail if it would disrupt the plot of your game. You want the plot to keep going, and disruptions to it, overturning it, is something that you have control over stopping it. These assassins, they are just, you determine their success. You determine it. There's nothing special about that. So if it's going to mess up your plot, have it fail. Or, again, don't try to punish your PCs too much if they abuse the system, but always look to failure as a way to basically punish them for attempting something they shouldn't have done. No matter how talented the assassin they hire is, they will have to go against the problems, overcome the difficulties of assassinating the target. This can vary depending on the type of targets. Some targets are pretty easy to assassinate, others are difficult. Wizards, priests, and kings all have various types of special defenses usually built in that would protect them against assassins. And especially if one of these groups should learn about the assassination attempt, or an attempt should be made, and then they are ready to basically put themselves at a defensive position against the next time, it would mean that in either of these cases, success, the rate drops to very slim. So it can become much more difficult. So, effectively what the players will do is, since they do have a say in the way things work there, is they're going to come up with the plan that the assassin is going to take. They will come up with this basic idea. They have to remember that the assassin has their own resources. Players have their resources, assassins have their resources, and they shouldn't come up with a plan that's going to be using their resources. They should come up with one that's using the assassin's resources. Once this plan is in place, you compare the plan to the defenses. Now again, you could always rule in one way or the other, depending on the circumstances, but if you want to keep it to a more reasonable level where you have a chance of failure, chance of success, just take a look at these two, and if the plan seems to outweigh, to overcome all the various defenses that have been put in place against this assassination, have it successful. Or if the defenses seem too much, well, again, they could overcome it. And as I said last time, it is incredibly important to note that assassins are very unscrupulous folks, and should one fail and be captured, they very easily will give up your name. And that will make your PC's lives really in trouble, make it not a good life, because they're going to have whoever they attempted to assassinate after them, who may or may not have resources behind them. At least will have the law on their side, so you can see how things can go really bad for PCs when they use assassins. Now, let's talk about the spy. So the spy is a very unscrupulous individual, and it is as unscrupulous to hire one, but not quite the level of an assassin. The fact is, the spy is also incredibly untrustworthy. The spy effectively has the job of infiltrating a group and deceiving them in order to gain some kind of information. So they are masters of deception. It's the sort of thing is that the better a spy is at their job, tricking people, then the less trustworthy they are. It's one of these juxtapositions about this thing. Is better they are, the less you can trust that they can actually be doing the right thing for you. Now, that isn't to say that some spies have their own codes or own goals in mind that can make them be effectively trustworthy. But the majority of them do not have the scruples to push themselves in a direction that means you can trust them completely. Now, just like with the assassin, the success of the spy should reflect upon how important it is in the game. If this spy is being sent to gain a certain amount of information, if this information helps out with the game story or doesn't hurt it at all, you can go ahead and have it completed. Because just like with the assassination, this is all role-playing based. It's all GM based to determine dramatically how it's successful or not. Now, again, if it's information that you think, man, my PC shouldn't know this, you can have them fail. But the spy has an interesting third option. What you can do with the spy is you can have them be successful, but the information that they gain isn't helpful, or it's incorrect, because those things can occur too. Just because the spy got some information and got out successfully doesn't mean it got the information that you need or information that's correct. As simple as that. The fact is, if you do end up similar to with the assassin, judging it by basically what's going on, by the merit of it, you will judge the merit of the spy versus the how formidable the enemy is, or the person that they're basically spying on. This difference you can just use to effectively find out if they're successful or not, if you want to give it more of a chance of success rather than you just judging it successful. Just take a look on how they would stack up and use that. Now, the last important hireling to talk about is the sage. The sage is an expert in some kind of knowledge that traditionally helps out the players with learning something, maybe deciphering some kind of ancient writing, even solving a riddle. They're hired on a limited basis to effectively solve a problem, to answer a question. The fact is that these sages will have knowledge based around the adventure you're having and pertaining only to the world that you're building. That is where we limit the knowledge of them. Now, the fact is, when you're looking for a sage, more likely than not, you're only going to find them in major urban centers, basically big cities. In small towns and places like that, you just don't find sages. The reason being, a sage wants to be in a place where they can meet lots of travelers and learn more stuff, or have access to some kind of library. These tend to not exist whatsoever in very small settlements, though again, exceptions could be built into the situation depending on the kind of world you're building, but it should make sense. And the fact is, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to be in these areas if they don't have access to this information. Now, there's a table in the book that gives you some information on how frequent you might be able to find some of these sages, and of course the kind of locations that you'd be finding them in. And you can use this as a backdrop to, of course, putting together, are my PCs going to find a sage, and is it going to be helpful to them when they're exploring this town? Now, that's it for today. I talked about those 3 specialized NPC hirelings. Finished talking about the assassin. And the fact is that the assassin still has to be managed properly if you even allow it. And then, assassination attempts don't help nearly as much as you want. Failure is something you can just have happen. And oftentimes there could be negative side effects of people especially find out you are the ones that caused the assassination. Similarly, spies. Spies can be helpful. They can find information for you. But they're not trustworthy. And again, they can find out about you if the spy gets captured. Or the spy might just not get good information. And then I started talking about the sage. A person that has basically knowledge that your players might be able to use in a particular adventure. They would hire on this sage for this knowledge for this adventure. And they would have to go to a big city to find a sage because that's really where they're located. Places with travelers and library materials where they can continue their sagely research. In the next episode, we're going to finish talking about sages and move on to talking about soldiers, that other type of group within the overall hireling. Because remember, these three that I was talking about today, they're only under the expert section of hirelings. We haven't even talked about soldiers. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support for the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. There's some great rewards there. It helps to grow and improve the channel. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.